All right, can everyone hear me okay? Amazing. Well, good afternoon. Welcome to AI House in Davos. I hope you've all had a good lunch because we've got a power-packed panel for you. We're going to talk about a very new topic called AI. We're going to really dig deeper into augmentation. We're going to dig deeper into whether it's time for AI to take over our jobs. We're going to talk about manufacturing, how real-world examples, success, failures. We've got a very power-packed panel here. Also to say that the panelists have agreed to take questions from you all, so if you have questions towards the end, we'll open the floor for questions and answers. So let me just go straight into it. Let me introduce my panelists. To my left is Daniele Iacovelli, SVP and Global Head of Digital AI and Operational Excellence, Roche. Next to Daniele is Barbara Frei, EVP and CEO of Industrial Automation, Schneider Electric. Next to Barbara is Filippo Catalano, EVP and Chief Information and Digital Officer, Mondelez International. And finally, we have Torbjørn, Netland, Professor of Production and Operations Management, ETH Zurich. Welcome to the panel. The topic today is augmented intelligence, taking manufacturing to the next level. Let's really break it down. 101. What does augmented intelligence... Sorry, let me just start again. You're okay? Okay. Let's break down the topic. What does augmented intelligence mean to each one of you, especially when it comes to manufacturing, in the context of manufacturing? So, Daniele, should we start with you?
Yeah, I think one of the comparison that we are always discussing is automation versus augmentation. I think for me, automation is primarily driving efficiencies, right? We are automating repetitive tasks. With RPA, we are going more and more into desktop activities, but it's always paying into efficiency. For me, augmentation means how do we augment intelligence? How do we amplify the intelligence of operators, analysts, to actually have better cognitive skills? And this means, how can we do problem solving in a better way? How can we do decision making in a better way, having all the intelligence at hands? Myself, I'm working at a Roche pharmaceutical company. We are doing drug development, drug manufacturing. These are biological processes, very complex, high, let's say, influencing factors, like you would try to predict human aging and growth. It's very difficult. That's why we're leveraging advanced analytics to understand how could we actually predict cell aging and help analysts actually to discover and manufacture better molecules, for instance.
Barbara?
Yeah, so I cannot really add a lot more because you said it all, but it's really about automation. You optimize a line, but then you get a lot of data. Additionally, you can measure the temperature, you can measure or find out who has been on the machine line and doing some parameter changes. And then, enriched with artificial intelligence, you can start to make proposals what to do better and how you improve the process, so that over the time you become more and more productive, better yield output, and so on. So it's for me not neither nor, it's really together, where it really augments our production output, so to say. And we expected, to be honest, a bit more when we started the journey 4 or 5 years ago. Today, we are a bit stuck with the use cases, and it's more about machine vision, control, quality inspection. We have not yet cracked the nut to really get the high productivity out.
Maybe just to cover a couple of other different aspects. Now in the call it the CPG, the consumer goods world, probably I would say two domains of this. The first one is employees in general. Everybody's part of some workflow in the company. And I have to say that everybody's kind of welcoming the ability to remove barriers to execution in their own job. Nobody likes to wait for hours for something to happen or to rekey in data somewhere else. So there is a point about making jobs better through augmentation for everybody. On the production or manufacturing and supply case, I think CPG is ripe for opportunity on AI and augmentation. I'll mention maybe two. The first one is waste reduction. I think we're all trying to reduce waste through the chain from how you stage materials, how you process materials, how you plan materials, and so on. And the second one probably is the intercompany collaboration. We're all trying to work better with our suppliers and our customers to reduce the waste along the chain. Think about carbon, think about scrap, and so on. So modeling through AI and is actually it's finally possible versus having companies trying to share data in a different way.
Torbjørn?
So I'm in the education business, and I truly believe human intelligence is more important than artificial intelligence. Maybe next year this will be the human intelligent house. The cool thing with augmented intelligence is that it combines the best of both, at least in theory. So if you can use AI to make humans smarter, not dumber, we're in a very good position.
That's very interesting. So we've set the scene for what is augmented intelligence, and it's a tough word to say. I think what will be interesting to understand is how far along are we in this journey of augmentation? What are the success stories that you've seen in your companies and your roles that you would potentially like to share? And then we can talk more about like the challenges that we have around it. But at Roche, what do you think? What are the success stories that you've seen? How far along are you in this journey now?
Yeah. Let me maybe start a bit also in my previous role before joining Roche. I was a partner at McKinsey and was serving many companies. I think the common mistake that I've seen is that there was over-focus on technology. And actually what we have done at Roche is, let's say, looking at it from I would call it triple transformation. First element is business. We're looking at what kind of value do we need to create. Secondly, we're looking then what kind of people, capabilities, what's the operating model we need to establish. And the last aspect is actually the technical aspects. What kind of data do we need to make accessible, reusable? What kind of infrastructure do we need to put in place? What is the AI model that we need to decide on? But that's really the afterthought. The anchor point is the business value that we want to, let's say, make happening. And also what's the user experience, what's the usability of an AI model that we want to establish so that we can also prioritize the features. Depending on, let's say, what user wants to have, we are prioritizing features, we are linking features to value, and then we are discussing what is, let's say, the data, for instance, that needs to be, let's say, captured, so that we can also estimate the value of data, because they are linked to value and to the use cases that we are establishing.
Barbara, do you agree with that?
Yes, I agree. We started the journey for our manufacturing sites in 2017. So we established a smart manufacturing program, and it was from the beginning a bottom-up program. So in principle, the people from the shop floor, they got presented what is possible, what is available in the market. At that time, not so much was available. And also our own solution that we then applied. And the success was then really that we had reduced energy consumptions, higher outputs, and it really depended on what the shop floor people wanted. So we never implemented something which was not accepted. And again, to really emphasize the use case, we see so many customers. We do consulting as well on manufacturing sites, and usually we see there was a McKinsey consultant there before, and they have now a lot of data.
I'm not part anymore, you can say.
And the adoption of the data is very low. They lose like 5%. And then you start to work with these clients, okay, how can you adopt more this data to make a useful case out of it? And usually it's a quick win case. So you save energy or you get a better output, whatsoever. And when it works, you roll it out to other sites. But I would say, I fully agree, there was far too much about technology and not about adoption, how to really make it happen and how to get the result.
Filippo, you are in the food production business, right? From the food production perspective, how do you think AI-driven insights can improve these operations without having to compromise human oversight?
Okay, I'll go back maybe to what I was saying. I think the food waste, and I'm not talking about only my company today, but really the industry of food. We know that reducing food waste is an important agenda item for everybody. There is a lot of waste in the chain up to the distribution to the consumer. So I think that's an angle we are all working on, from the raw materials to the production to the distribution, and that require also cross-company collaboration. One thing maybe I wanted to comment, because there were an interesting chain of thoughts there. I think most companies are still, of course we look at the AI opportunities, but you cannot do good AI. You cannot go beyond, good LinkedIn posts on pilots and POCs if you don't do your groundwork on the data foundations. Daniele was starting to talk about maybe two elements of FAIR, right? I think it's really instituting the FAIR architecture in enterprises for findability, accessibility, interoperability, and reusability is what most companies still need to do at scale. If we don't do that, we can do a lot of pilots and POCs, but we will not adopt and scale. That's
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, Torbjørn. Would you like to comment on that?
No, I fully agree. I mean, there's large gaps in the pack when it comes to AI. AI reality is lagging the AI hype. Okay. Now, here are some absolutely amazing companies, all Lighthouse award-winning companies. They are ahead, and still you hear them talking about we're doing use case after use case. We're trying. We've established this program, so that's where we are. Okay. That doesn't say that. I mean, there's an enormous opportunity in AI, upwards opportunity, but we're still just scratching the surface.
So what are the barriers then? Why are we just scratching the surface? What's stopping us?
I think, to be very honest, sometimes it's overhyped. And specifically this week, I got this feeling. So I was in a dinner and...
we have been asked to be provocative.
Yeah.
She's starting with it.
No, and then you sit in a dinner and then you have the Amazons, the Googles, who say, this is the great time. I've never seen such an innovative time as ever. And then you have CFOs saying, guys, I don't see the use case. I don't see the payback. So specifically in the area of manufacturing, when you really go to different stakeholders like the IPC providers, which are really at the core of this business, they say, look, machine vision is the business case up to now. Is there much more to come? We will see. I think we are still at the very, very beginning, and let's see what's coming. So I think there is a bit, if I go to my salespeople and R&D people, there is much more efficiency you can get than in manufacturing. That's at least my opinion today, but I'm now happy to be challenged.
I would say one of the if you produce physical goods, whatever industry you're in, you have a physical layer that you need to take care, right? And everybody thinks about, I have this, abstraction layer here. At the end, you have to have machines, lines, conveyors, AGVs that needs to work, right? And most companies didn't do the groundwork of really fixing some of those basics. And second, most companies grew through different types of acquisitions. So there is not a good unified layer on the physical space on how data gets captured, with what frequency, So that's the other piece that is missing, is how do you disintermediate some of the complexity of the physical layer, because you're collecting
IT-OT
data.
integration.
My view, it's slightly different. I mean, I think, when it comes to barriers, everyone is immediately saying technology is the barrier. I don't have the data available, accessible, reusable. Okay, that's a huge monster, right? Data is a huge monster. Okay. Second is the infrastructure, right? But for me, actually, the key barrier, specifically now, which is evolving a bit more technology, is really people and people capabilities. I think we were always talking about war of talents, and 5-6 years ago, everyone was struggling to find maybe the right data scientists, data engineers at scale, right? Because you want to scale, so you need a lot of these capabilities. I think with Gen AI, we have a bit of a support and also doing some analytics with some support. For me, what is missing is more, let's say, the intersection between technical capabilities and operational capabilities. We call them translators. So people which understand AI, digital, and actually understand the business, because in order to create value at scale, you need to create new ways of working. If I may have a tool, but still I work the same, then I don't create any significant value. That's why we are always looking at what are the clusters of use cases, which then leads to different ways of working. Because that's substantial value. And in order to do that, you need to have people which are able to redesign processes, to let people work differently and not only technical elements. And I'm saying a bit provocative, I'm saying sometimes I feel like I'm in Toys R Us because we are buying tools and toys, but actually I need tools, I need solutions, not toys.
How do we find those people then? How do we train them?
That's the difficult things, right? Because I think you don't get them from the market, from university immediately. So it's a bit of a hybrid, let's say, solution where you're saying I'm either hiring or getting people with AI knowledge, and then I'm upskilling the operational excellence, business excellence element, or I'm bringing business people and I'm upskilling them on AI. It depends a bit on, let's say, the use of these people. If I want to use them for super complex AI models, for instance, in the biological space, which I'm working, then I would tend to have rather an AI person, and I'm train them in the operational side. If I'm rather talking about more, let's say, basic elements like predictive maintenance, for instance, it could be vice versa.
Right. So that's an interesting point, Torbjørn. You're in the education sector. Do these views resonate with you? What are you seeing in terms of hiring, in terms of the talent, fresh talent out there?
So first of all, at ETH, we have the best talent. Some of them are sitting here.
That's a great plug.
But yeah, sure, they come from the school bench and they need to meet the industry. So that's why it takes some years sometimes for them to, of course, learn all the practical sides as well. But there is talent, okay? So that may be a bottleneck, but people come out. And companies can also work with other companies like startups or integrators. So there is people too. I don't think really, that's really not a complete showstopper either. May I come back to one of the points?
Yeah, absolutely.
I always hear when we have this discussion, use case. Huh? All you guys talk about use case. And use case is a quite interesting term. It was put out by Ericsson in the 1980s when they were looking for application areas for their technology, software technology. So what does that mean? It's a technology push concept. Here's these fancy new models, how can we use them? These things first become powerful when we match them with a business case, use case, business case, a pull, a need. And Daniele is talking about, where can we use them? Where is the business value? I intended to be a little bit maybe more on the realist side, but I also hear that you are quite realist, so I will go to the positives. I attended a dinner yesterday called The Case for Optimism. So
Okay.
let's see if we can bring it in. Yeah. So because we see also in the Lighthouse Network, and they measure thousands of use cases.
Right.
And the ones that are successful are those that start with a very clear business problem. A business problem which is really painful for the company. And then they use AI to fix that. That could be things like root cause analysis, can be visual inspection, but many other things too.
When you look around the industry, and this is a question for all of you, do you see that model being implemented? Do you see more and more companies starting with the business case or business value and then building it up? What's your read generally?
If you have a strong CFO, you always start with the CFO.
You do need a lot of funding for it. You do need
you
a lot of resources for it as well.
I remember when we had the discussion in Schneider Electric 5 years ago, 4 years ago, Jean-Pascal, at that time, the chairman and CEO, he pushed a lot that we build up 200 people in artificial intelligence, so like a central team. And I remember almost everyone in the ExCom was a bit against it because there was no business case, so to say. But we did the investment. And in the beginning, it was a big push. We need to make business with these people. And we didn't zero business. So after 2 or 3 years, we started to reshape and say, hey, let's first eat our own food in the sense of we look at ourselves. How can we get more efficient by applying artificial intelligence? And that proved then to be much more effective than the other approach. So I'm convinced if you want to invest in artificial intelligence to make money in the end, then you really have to start with a business case. Otherwise, you're not getting there.
Yeah.
For me, there is another aspect, and again, the industry, I know consumer goods, it's the process visibility and tasks visibility to really understand what the biggest opportunities are, where you go for the value that comes from elimination of unnecessary steps, elimination of rework, and so on. You need to know what the processes are really in the reality, not how they are designed somewhere on a visual diagram, but how they're actually running today. And the concept of task mining, what are actually people doing in their day-to-day? Because if you ask people, what's the biggest opportunity for you to automate or put AI to help you, they would actually give you something different from what they're actually doing. So you need to be able to measure the reality of how people are spending their time and what the real barrier is. So then the value.
The red time, so to say.
Yeah, basically the waiting time. I'm waiting for somebody else. I'll do this work 3 times because somebody's changing this data while I've changed it already once. So if you get to that level of baselining, then you can really be more laser focused and say, I see value here, I invest here, I know how to extract the value, and I can move to the next.
Daniele, would you like to comment?
No, I clearly see a shift in most of the companies looking more and more into value.
Okay.
And I think there is a natural evolution. Everyone started bottom up. everyone saw there are 1,000 flowers blooming everywhere. There is no scale, no business case. And everyone shifted then maybe to the extreme, top down, did not work. And I think now more and more companies find the balance between bottom up and top down. And the second element is, I would say, I mean, it's interesting to see how, let's say, scalability should work, should happen. And again, it's a technical element, but it's also a bit of a governance. What kind of governance do I put in place? In our case, what we did is, for instance, when we are looking at our sites, the site, there is a leading site to really develop a solution, and the leading site will then transfer to the following site. We don't let all the site explore, because then it's just chaotic. It creates even further fragmentation, even more complexity. So every site is responsible for a digital AI capability that we want to develop within the company. Second element is, I mean, we introduce a bit the definition of capturing value and generating value. Generating value is, for instance, theoretically, I can save hours. I have automation, RPA, and theoretically, these people would save 1,000 hours. But as long as I'm not changing the task of a person, then these are theoretical hours. That's generated, but not captured.
Right.
And that's a big difference where leaders need to really lean in. Because capturing is difficult. Sometimes you need to communicate that you need to reduce FTEs, or you need to create more volume, right? More growth. And that's the discussion that we are having in all the, let's say, use cases, or we are calling it value pools that we are discussing.
So these are conversations that you're all having within your organizations. Torbjørn, how are you looking at these conversations from when you wear an educational hat?
So this resonates a lot with what I see in other companies. And go back a little bit on the use case and business case. It's also not like this, you can start with a business case. Let me explain a little bit. This is very, very disruptive emerging technologies, okay? So you need to explore what they can do all the time. But you have to toggle between the business case and use case, and then move when you find that. And one very interesting insight I have from Siemens is that when they have looked at this internally, they see that 70%, or roughly 2 out of 3, use cases that they have in their single factories, they don't have a business case at that factory. But if they take that use case and scale it across their sites, there's a business case. So that comes back to Daniele's point that you cannot also look at this in isolation. So you need that infrastructure, also that you're talking about, that is able to scale this.
How do you balance both use case and business case? How do you know which one you start with? Every company might have a very different viewpoint on that, right?
That's the operational excellence part. You start with the things that is hindering you from delivering good quality products to the customers.
Right.
And there's so much knowledge about this in the manufacturing industry. Maybe next year, by the way, we call this the lean house, operational excellence, because that's where we have to start.
Which, by the way, is also, you asked the question about how what you do on the people side, or bring people along. Most companies have a great community of people that have the Lean Six Sigma experience and whatever other flavor of methodology for continuous improvement. Now, if you give them the tooling that allows them to augment their throughput, they will be super, super happy. Mm-hmm. Because today there is still a lot of manual work that gets done on the observability, on the analytics. So that's another big people motivator. People that work on lean, they are super interested in getting augmented in their work.
Yeah, I want to talk about talent transformation and skilling, because that's been a theme across Davos this year. More and more companies are talking about how it's important to reskill and upskill. But also when I spoke to employees, I heard, have you all heard of a term called FOBO? And does anyone know what FOBO stands for? You're nodding.
Fear of missing out?
FOBO, F-O-B-O.
Ah, okay.
I don't know. It's fear of being obsolete. And in so many conversations I've had where there is a disconnect between how employees are feeling and how employers are feeling, because companies they really want to be ahead in this AI race. The pace of advancement is so fast that I think companies are also trying their best to bridge that gap. But then you've got employees who are worried that if they don't upskill, if they don't learn how to be, sort of throw themselves really with the pace of advancement, then they'll be obsolete. So I think my question to you all is it's great that we're talking about augmented intelligence in the world of sort of manufacturing and all of that. How are you as employers or as managers ensuring that your teams, your talent is consistently upskilled, giving them the opportunity so they don't feel that sense of FOBO?
So in Schneider Electric, we have a relatively strong upskilling program. So we have 160,000 employees and 88,000 are in global supply chain. And we just launched last year a program where we say 40,000 operators needs to be trained on the newest tool and processes. So we have about 500 tailored programs which are rolled out in the different sites. And there is a relatively strong follow-up that all these trainings are happening. And that's highly motivating, in the sense of also you can earn more money afterwards. So because your job becomes more valuable. And you know, we are in a fortunate situation at the moment in Schneider Electric. We are adding manufacturing capacity almost every day. So we don't really have to fear that the job would get lost, because we have such a demand on workforce that this really enables us to keep the pace.
Filippo, did you want to comment?
What I can share is that a common element on those programs that I've seen works really well is the ability to burst some myths, basically to break some misconceptions. A lot of people have a very different or wrong idea of what it, or even they overestimate the difficulty of getting reskilled and retrained. And once those things get kicked off, the pace is actually very high. And programs that allow you to democratize access. You know, think about citizen developer type of programs, citizen analyst, citizen AI prompter type of thing. If you diffuse the knowledge and you empower everybody to be their best because they're closer to the work, they're closer to the knowledge, this works normally better than a lot of classroom exercises that don't have the practical aspect.
And it's a very important element to attract new talents. Mm-hmm. So industry is not the area where people would logically go. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But by having newest technology available and also offering you can get upskilled, that's a big benefit.
I mean, for me, also within Roche, I think what I've seen is many companies are focusing on training, upskilling, capability building, but actually the missing piece is the career development, career journey, specifically for technical people. So for instance, data engineer, data scientist. Okay, how does your career journey look like? You're a junior data engineer, a senior data engineer, and then what? It's really difficult to bridge them to become a business leader, a senior business leader and executive. So that's why we are focusing on the one side on obviously learning journeys, capability building, but specifically what's the career journey of such a technical, more specialist or expert? How does he become a senior leader, business leader? I think this is something that all of us needs to develop and strengthen.
Yeah, and just sort of before I go to Torbjørn, how do you enforce some of this upskilling and reskilling across the organization? I mean, you can provide all the platforms, you can provide everything possible for your employees. How are you ensuring that they're actually kind of using it? How are you ensuring that is this a part of their KPIs? Is this something that leads to fast-track career growth? What is it that they're being offered?
It's clearly part of the KPIs. And just, we have a program in Schneider Electric called the Electrifier. So if you want to get up of level 1, 2, 3, you have to fulfill certain criteria. And specifically when we talk about supply chain, this is a highly attractive program because there is also an incentive element to it. So that's the way how to get it done. So now, to be adopted for different regions.
Yeah. Absolutely. Torbjørn, what do you think about when you look around the industry? Are there specific companies stand out where you think they're doing really well with training up their employees, or do you think there's a lot that needs to be done right now? Is there still a gap in terms of literacy?
Well, there is, of course, talent gap. We hear everywhere in Western countries. And there's some companies that are doing really well. But this, of course, is on top of the agenda of many companies, so they are focusing on it. If I turn it around a little bit, I wonder if maybe can AI help us?
Yes.
That may be more of a fun fact, but I tried to replace myself with an AI.
Did you?
It actually worked.
So is this you or your AI clone?
This is me.
Okay, great. Nice to meet you.
I decided not. I decided not to use it, but we did some AI-created videos. We gave it to some students, and they scored just as well on the exam as if they had me in the classroom. But they enjoyed it less. Anyways, I don't use it, but it just shows a little bit of the potential.
Right.
But more importantly, I think the biggest unsolved problem in manufacturing, actually not just manufacturing, perhaps all business sectors, is capturing and transfer knowledge, right? And if we could solve that, if we could do it quicker, we don't necessarily also need more people because we could get more out of the people we have. And that is an unsolved space, super interesting. If anybody are interested in that, how can you use AI to capture, not just codified knowledge, tested knowledge,
Knowledge extraction.
share it. Maybe co-pilots and chatbots can be part of that story, but that's just the far end of use. Really the big issue is how do you capture that knowledge? That
Would you all like to comment on that?
No, I mean, I think it's, knowledge management is a focus priority of every company. We're doing it as well. I mean, it started with searching for knowledge, I think a decade ago. Now it goes more and more in generating new insights, new knowledge, looking at, let's say, how do we really amplify the knowledge of people to take more data-driven decisions. I think because most of the complex problems requires really tons of document. Instead of, let's say, non-value-adding tasks, looking for all these documents, reading through all kind of papers, actually this can be given at hands of operator, so that really she focus on value-adding tasks. So knowledge management is absolutely a priority for us.
When you look at the augmented intelligence space in manufacturing, if you look at the next 5 to 10 years, how do you see the space evolving? What is it that, I mean, if I were to put a crystal ball here in front of you and ask you, how do you see the space evolving? And then potentially also, what are the barriers that's holding us back? Who wants to go first? They're all thinking.
So for us, the big topic is automate the automation.
Right.
Today, when you build up a new production line or a system, a lot of engineering hour goes into programming the automation.
Yeah.
And we did start with some tests 1.5 years ago. And it has a big potential. And it combines simulation, generative IA, machine learning. It's really a high complexity of chains. The challenge we see is to get the data. Mm-hmm. So we don't really have the data to learn. And that's something from our point of view we need to solve in the next 3 to 4 years to really get an acceleration here.
I'll give you maybe a provocative answer on that, which is it's one of my mantras on automation, is that the best automation is the one you don't need because things actually work, right? So I think that's the challenge for the next 10 years, is that there is so much legacy in every enterprise, talking the physical layer, the technology layer, that people are focusing on patching things versus foundationally solving how the enterprise should work in the world of a better technology. So instead of patching with random automation, how do I make it work by design first? That's for me the biggest challenge.
Daniele?
For me, maybe 3 trends. One is around people. I think people in future would be more and more multi-skilled. They know AI, they know digital, they are solution architects, they are business leaders, they know how to really improve operations, so multi-skilled people. Mm-hmm. Second trend I see, if I'm looking at, let's say, use cases, more and more, let's say, cross functions. So in our area, we are manufacturing molecules. We recognize these molecules have high variability. In future, we would like to loop it back to the development so that we are really, let's say, designing molecules based on the experience that we have manufacturing and vice versa. So cross functions. And the last trend, I would say, validation, testing of solution will become more and more relevant, especially in regulated environments. Because just exemplary, sometimes to develop a model, it takes maybe weeks, months, but to validate the model, it takes like factor 500% more time. Mm-hmm. So I think having also a validation strategy, a testing strategy is absolutely key, and having the right capabilities and talents that know how to validate models will be absolutely relevant in future.
Torbjørn, what's your prediction in the next 5 to 10 years? How do you see the space evolving?
Oi, that's above my pay grade. Look, for the vast majority of manufacturers, in the next 5 years, they will get started with AI. They will be where these companies are now, okay? Now talk 2-3 years out. 10 years is, I don't want to speculate because we are really at the beginning of this, right?
Yeah.
Well, so I put something on LinkedIn before I came here, which was basically a question if manufacturers that don't implement AI are doomed. And it was interesting that actually most people agreed with that statement because most manufacturers definitely don't use AI today. We did a survey in Swiss manufacturing high-tech sector, the most expensive country almost in the world, high-tech sector. 2% of the companies use AI at scale in their operations. Wow. Okay, Lighthouse network companies, this is 100% now. Okay, it shows some of the gap. So for these companies, it's really about getting started and doing all that homework. So maybe, and if we look at the Lighthouse companies, where will they be? Well, I hope they get a little bit out of this use case, collection of use case. That's where they are, right? The best of the best use case. Because we would really like to see a little bit of that lights out type factories realized, okay? That doesn't mean there are no people, but automated factories, high quality products, delivered fast to the market. That's where AI can help as well. Yeah.
How do you convince? How there is still a lot of resistance, I guess, to change. So how would you go about encouraging more and more manufacturing companies to adapt? The adaptability is still very low.
I think my experience. So you go to China and you go to this new energy landscape manufacturing. It's exactly as you describe.
Right.
So they are top notch. It's almost empty of people because it's fully optimized. And then you come to the factory in Europe and coming back to the legacy and everything. It's damn expensive to build a new factory and say, I switch off the old one. I think that's the biggest hurdle we have.
Yeah, so I think it's balancing multiple things, and so it's not just a Europe thing. You're saying it's kind of across the world.
Yeah, it's across the world, but I would say China is the biggest manufacturing country.
Yeah,
and they were the ones really investing in new production capacity in new areas. That's why you see so. When we go to our factories, where we produce products which are existing since 20 years in China, same problem.
Right. So right. Okay. Well, I think we've got time now for some questions and answers. So I'm going to open the floor. If you have a question, please raise your hand and introduce yourself and tell us who your question is for. There you go. Got one question there.
Hi, my name is Ali Engin. I do fiber composite manufacturing in the Middle East and in America now. And one of the biggest things I would like to ask you specifically too, because I know you're saying instead of automation, augmentation of AI is the number of people that you can't get to work a factory line like you used to. And I know that every country has different scales to it, but to give an example, the factory we have in Turkey, I can employ 380 people quite easily. The one it's quite a big facility, there's a lot of production capacity. In America, the one we just started, I couldn't get 15 people to put on a line properly because no one wants to do that work anymore. So one of the questions I guess I really wanted to get to is, compared to automation and versus augmenting with AI, is it more of a force? And that's where we get a lot of resistance. How can we integrate it in a way where you don't have it popping up in the news, you know, saying the factories are opening up and people are losing jobs, when at the same time we can't even fill the production capacity in the first place unless we're forced to automate, augment, and with high-skilled workers, of course, those jobs are becoming increasingly valuable. Everybody's poaching everybody from different companies.
Yeah.
How can we integrate it, I guess, in your own words, AI into our manufacturing capacity without ruining, I guess you can say, families, environments, and everything else that kind of go with legacy, manufacturing?
Yeah, let's start with Torbjørn, I guess.
Well, so that's a beautiful example, actually, of where is there a business use case? Yeah, both places. Oh, you can use AI, but where's the business case? Yeah, it's in US or Germany or Switzerland or wherever. But it's not in Turkey, obviously, right? So yeah, and this is a reality, and it's also different from different industries, right? And maybe yours Maybe you need more human power than others. So I think it's a great example, and you need to do what's right for your business. That I'd like to say. And
Anyone else?
there's a few other things, but
No, go for it. Sorry, keep going. Did you want to continue?
I just want to say that I don't think actually you can get to automation without going through augmentation.
Right.
At least if we're talking about full automation, you need to go through your people. You know, the people you have there have to automate that system. To help them automate it, you need to use augmentation. There is some path there.
Anyone else wanted to comment on that?
No, just can fully agree. You need people who are then knowing what kind of decisions you need to implement in this artificial intelligence algorithm. And again, you need a lot of data to really make it useful. And I think that's still, every data is somehow related to a certain domain. And I think that's also for me one of the biggest hurdles we see.
Any more questions?
But I think there are also ways of augmenting, upskilling, and capability building, right? I mean, also in the biologic space, it's difficult to have and hire the right experts. And we're looking at innovative way of how do we onboard people, right? Augmented reality, virtual reality type of setups, where you can steer also operators at the beginning a bit more, and depending on the maturity or the expertise or the capabilities of the person might get more guidance or less guidance. So I think there are also more innovative way of just traditional E-class learning.
Sorry, the fragrance of waffles is really distracting. I don't know if anyone else has that, but I think you had a question.
Hi, Eric Ansem. I'm working with the World Economic Forum on the Industry Net Zero Accelerator Initiative. Any perspective or thought from you, particularly the manufacturing industry, in terms of how AI in general and Gen AI can help you to accelerate the work on scope 3 reduction?
But scope 3 means that what you buy and that what you deliver to a customer. Eh?
All your upstream and downstream, which
correct.
typically are so important because every company influences those emissions, but given they are not under your direct control, one of the key problems is data exchange and how do you get back to the product carbon footprint. So any thought about that?
I'll give maybe an answer not specific to the company, but this has been a topic where I think a few companies try to work together because you cannot solve it on your own. It's the classic kind of multi-system optimization. Most companies, if they do it on their own, you optimize a slice of the problem, but you can make it even worse for the full chain. So that's a great use case for AI, and I've seen very good results in the industry at scale on the ability not just to safely share data across companies, because what is a purchase order for me, it's a sales order for you, and how do we build the taxonomy of that interaction is a huge space of work that is happening now. But the second one is that if you put the right outcomes to be a single KPI for the chain, AI is actually very well fit for helping the optimization, because it's non-linear, it's exponential, it's multi-factor, and the parameters are a lot of parameters to optimize, and there are very, very good experiences out there.
I think there was a question somewhere at the back. Yes, the gentleman there.
Hi, my name is Sachin. I've worked in the manufacturing industry now for over 10 years, and particularly in the digital space, right? My question is on a topic that wasn't touched here in the panel, which is about business models. Now, manufacturing, value chain, and I really like what Torbjørn said about use cases versus business cases. And in my experience over the last decade in digitization, one of the key challenges that I have faced, which I still don't have a clear answer on, is business models. We are modernizing our factories, we are modernizing our lines, our people, but the value chain across multiple OEMs, the supply chain, now we talk about scope 1, 2, and 3, where we need to make data and everything transparent, it's still a money-making industry. How are we solving the problem where everyone in this value chain is modernizing, where data has to be shared, but everybody is also needing to elevate their business models to make money in this modernization? Have you guys come across this problem where you want to share the data with your OEMs, and how are they democratizing or putting business models in place to make additional money, taking that manufacturing to the next level. Have you solved this problem yet?
It's a great question.
No, obviously we have, at least from what I know, we have not solved it. Again, I said it twice already. The problem is we don't get the data we need to really do Gen AI in our field, and there is still a belief that what I know is my treasure, and that's why I don't share it with you. And I think it's not so much related to business model. It's more, it's an attitude. And to change this attitude is very, very difficult, specifically in the B2B business. So I can pay my distributors. My distributors, they give me additional data where I'm selling if I'm paying them 2% more. Or they can deduct, they get 2% more discount. But that's it. That's what I get. But if I want to get data from an OEM which is using my products, you say, no way. You are going to share it with my competitor. So there is no trust in the industry at this moment. If you have a recipe how to change this, I'm a taker.
Anyone else wanted to weigh?
What I've seen is, it starts always with, you need to create a win-win situation, obviously, right? And very often what I've done also with other companies is starting to look at, let's say, total cost of ownership. And then starting to say with, let's say, the company I would like to collaborate with, to say, look, if I'm able, with your support, to reduce my total cost of ownership by 10%, I will deduct some of the benefits to you. So I think these are more and more the things that you need to start with to have actually the appetite to work together.
Any more questions? I think we've got time for one more. Okay, go for it.
Yes, thanks. Pierre from Switzerland. I'd like to follow up on the technology stack that you mentioned. Now we are talking about generative AI. Before we were company were ramping up to hire as many data scientists that we can. But Schneider Electric has been invented the smart meter since the 70s. Right. So we have a lot of different technology stacks with different type of knowledge. How do you bridge and the communications between those teams, like from the operations to the IT teams to the data scientists and business people?
Yeah, anyone wants to comment on that?
You let them work in common projects. So, for instance, we develop a product or a software, and then the people, the data scientists from our artificial intelligence hub, they are part of the teams. So you really have cross-functional teams working on the projects. Or we have our internal machine builders in our global manufacturing, and they are applying our solutions that we develop, the motion products. And then we have a kind of iterative approach that we say, hey, you have to improve the product. This is what it's not working. So this is how we try to exchange. But I think there is always a fact when you're a large company, exchange of know-how is really difficult.
And is it particularly difficult in the manufacturing industry, do you think, compared to other industries out there?
Yes, because a lot is happening physically.
Right. And so we're very far away from getting there.
Correct.
So just coming back to that, you're all working for companies that have a lot of resources, that are big companies. When you look at small companies, SMEs, how are they able to, with limited budgets and limited resources, how do you think they're going to be able to leverage AI? Any advice, any tips that you have for them? Or anything that needs to change?
I think it's more the natural point. They have zero legacy or no legacy to work with, and maybe they're not hindered by the sunk cost fallacy, right? So if you don't have sunk cost, it's easier also psychologically to move to completely new things versus, I already invested in this for the past 5 years, and I can still try to make it work. We get all enamored with the things we've done so far. So that's the big advantage. I'm not so much on the point of agility and so on. That's just a consequence. It's really, at the end, it's the financial ability to look at things in a fresh way. And that's why also to maybe to your question, part of the answer is how companies change the way they look at P&L. Because if you have different components of cost and different components of benefits of this new stack of things that you do together, belonging to different parts of the P&L, is very difficult to really optimize for the outcome. And that's why product teams actually are normally good constructs to try to tie the pieces together with TCO, with platform thinking, and so on.
Yeah, Torbjørn, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, on the small, medium-sized, 99% of manufacturing companies in Switzerland are small, medium-sized. The same in the US.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's an enormous market for anybody who comes up with a smart idea of how they can utilize AI. And those smart minds are out there. So for the small, medium-sized enterprises, it's about teaming up with other SMEs. Suddenly you have, much more data if you go together. Maybe an analogy, a little bit interesting. I was today in a session with prime ministers from small countries in Europe. And they say, yeah, well, we have a 500 million market. But if we can enter EU, we have 1,000 times that. It's the same with the small, medium-sized enterprises. There are AI models for masquerading data, federated models and stuff, so you can access the data or the insight without sharing, the exact recipes. And then the startups can help them. This market's going to come. It's going to happen. So small, medium-sized enterprises are soon going to also do a lot of AI.
Yeah, so this is a space we'll just have to wait and watch. Hopefully over the next few years, we just need to bring all the stakeholders together. But who is bringing those stakeholders together?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was here.
I mean, it's very interesting, but who do we need to bring them all together, or are we leaving it to serendipity?
I think if the incentives are right, the market will bring them together.
I think it's a combination of universities, let's say institution like, for instance, World Economic Forum, ISPE, in the pharmaceutical sector, and actually the interest of companies, especially small companies. I think they need to build communities across different companies to get access to external knowledge. So it's a combination of the three.
Perfect. Last question from me, closing thoughts, 30 seconds each. If you had to predict one breakthrough AI-driven innovation in manufacturing within the next decade, what would that be? Should we start with Torbjørn?
It's already here. It's called the Manufacturing Analytics System.
Okay, so we're sorted for the next 10 years.
Can I go last? I'm thinking more.
Let's go to Barbara then.
10 years. Well.
Barbara.
I honestly don't know.
Don't know.
I honestly don't know. It can be, again.
Maybe there is something about this bridging of the physical world with the data layer that I still cannot think how it's going to happen, but there is something there that needs to...
Maybe there is a digital twin, real time.
Yeah.
You can see anytime what's going on in the manufacturing somewhere in the world.
Yeah.
And you can see this on one screen. So
That's great. Daniele, anything?
For me, one of the fundamental capabilities every company has is root cause analysis to solve problems, right? And I think this will be done completely 100% by AI.
Perfect. So let's make sure we meet here in a year's time, next Davos, and see where we are with things. But that's all we have time for. Thank you so much to the audience.
Thank you.